Peace, Israel, and Yah bless. Thy righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and thy law is truth. The title of today's lesson / segment is Waking Up Dead People. Once again, today's lesson / segment is entitled Waking Up Dead People. Many of our people are walking around. They are dead. They're alive, but they're not living, and there is a difference. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the scriptures and see how the job of the men of Israel, the messengers of the Most High, we are simply to wake up, to shake, and to bring awake and to bring to remembrance dead people. Once again, brace yourselves, tighten up your jaws, do not turn to the left or to the right, or you will get hit in the mouth. We are to walk the straight and narrow way of the Most High's commandments. We're not to deviate from that thing. All right, we will start off in Isaiah chapter 60. Isaiah chapter 60, and we will read verse 1 and verse 2. Isaiah chapter 60, verse 1 reads, Arise, shine, for thy light is come, and the glory of Yah is risen upon thee. Verse 2, For behold, the darkness shall cover the earth, and gross darkness the people. But Yah shall arise upon thee, and his glory shall be seen upon thee. Now, understand what has happened here is that the whole earth has been placed in darkness. Darkness is simply a lack of light. Darkness is akin to sin. Light is akin to wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. So when the earth has been put in gross darkness, that means in darkness, one is not allowed to see anything. You're not allowed to understand anything, which means you'll be walking around in circles. You'll be bumping into walls, falling victim to traps and snares because you have no vision because it's dark. So the whole earth has been blanketed with darkness. Darkness is sin, and that can also be akin to deception or lies. Okay, so for us being in darkness, meaning we will not know exactly what the correct way is to go. All right, so we see here clearly where the earth has been placed under gross darkness, but we will see where the Most High will put his spirit upon us, and we will arise, and the glory of the Most High will be seen upon his chosen, upon his elect, upon his sons and daughters. Okay, so this is what's going to happen as we start coming into the latter days, as we start turning back onto the Most High's laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts. So we go from Isaiah chapter 60, let's go to Isaiah chapter 52, and we will read verse 2. We're going back a few chapters. So we're going to go from the back part of Isaiah. We're going to track going backwards. That way you can see exactly how all of this comes into play. All right. Isaiah chapter 52, verse 2 reads, Shake thyself from the dust. Arise and sit down, O Jerusalem. Loose thyself from the bands of thy neck, O captive daughter of Zion. So we see clearly where we are to shake ourselves from the dust. Someone that's in the dust is someone who's considered to be dead. Someone that's in the dust is someone who is filthy, someone who is dirty. So if we're going to shake ourselves from the dust, it's the house of Israel cleaning up ourselves, cleaning up our act, coming out of darkness into light. Okay, and that is us arising and cleaning ourselves, shaking ourselves off from the dust. All right, let's turn to Isaiah chapter 29, verse 10. Isaiah chapter 29. Isaiah chapter 29, verse 10. And verse 10 of Isaiah chapter 29 reads, For Yah has poured out upon you the spirit of deep sleep, and hath closed your eyes. The prophets and your rulers, the seers, who are prophets of old time, hath he covered. So, the Most High has poured out a spirit of deep sleep upon the children of Israel. He has closed our eyes. He's made us blind so where we can't see. He's taken the rulers and the seers, meaning those who are in charge, okay, the rulers. He's taken them, and he's also taken the seers, and he's literally cut them off, okay, to where they will not be able to see anything. He's covered them. He's closed their eyes. He's cut them off. So there's no light coming to them. There's no understanding coming to them. He's taken away the vision of the prophets. And he's put the entire house of Israel, the entire family, he's put them asleep and have closed their eyes. So when you have a man that's asleep, he's unconscious. So in order to get this man awake, depending on how dire the situation is, you're going to have to get his attention somehow. So that is why this channel is titled Slapping You with the Truth. If someone is unconscious, you've got to snatch him. You've got to shake him. Some of them you have to slap harder than others. Some of them you have to shake harder than others. But the reason why we have to do this is because we are in a state of disarray. The house, Israel, is on fire. He's being burnt round about him. And he has not considered, why are these things happening to me? Why am I on fire? Why is our whole houses on fire? So what the men of Israel, in whose heart is the Most High's law, what we're doing is we're going to the house of Israel, and we're going into many different rooms. And there are people asleep in those rooms. And we're grabbing them, we're shaking them, trying to bring them to remembrance, trying to cause them to wake up from this slumber, because our house is on fire. And failure to wake up and shake yourself from the dust is going to get you killed. So therefore, this is just another lesson to wake up the children of Israel, that we may get up from the dust. So we have a people who are in a deep sleep, who have been covered with darkness. All right, let's move up one verse. Let's move up one verse to verse 9 of Isaiah chapter 29. And verse 9 reads, "Stay yourselves and wonder. Cry ye out and cry. They are drunken, but not with wine. They stagger, but not with strong drink." So we are like drunk men, but, and we're staggering. But it's not because we took strong drink, because the Most High has removed our knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. So therefore, we are in these nations acting stupid. We want to kill another brother over stepping on your shoes and things of the like. And kill a brother because he may have on a red shirt or a blue pants, or he's not in your neighborhood, etc. This is the ignorance that has been placed in the midst of our people, and it is nothing but the fury of the Most High. Okay, so these are some of the things, if we want to get out of the mess that we're in. First of all, we have to wake up first. We have to get ourselves out of the dust. We have to remove ourselves from darkness. All right, so, we're walking around, we're acting drunk, acting silly, because we're in the dust. We have no understanding. There is no vision in the midst of the people. And when there is no vision, the people suffer, because there's no one to lead in the proper direction, because we're all blind. And what we cannot do, we cannot have the blind leading the blind. That is a disaster. All right, let's move up. Move up one verse to Isaiah chapter 29, verse 4. Isaiah chapter 29, verse 4. And verse 4 reads, "And thou shalt be brought down, and shalt speak out of the ground, and thy speech shall be low out of the dust, and thy voice shall be as one that hath a familiar spirit out of the ground, and thy speech shall whisper out of the dust." All right, so we know one that has a familiar spirit is to be killed. We're not to walk in the ways of the soothsayer and follow after witchcraft or any of that sort of nonsense. These are abominations before the Most High. So it's saying here that we shall be brought down. We're going to be brought low. That's where we are. We're at the bottom of the barrel in all the many nations in which we dwell. Okay? We shall speak out of the ground. So we're, as dead men, we're covered with dirt. We're covered with darkness. And we're going to speak out of the ground. And thy speech shall be low out of the dust. Okay, so we're in the dust. whereas dead men maneuvering in these nations. All right, now let's move to Isaiah chapter 27, and we will read verse 11. Isaiah chapter 27, and we will read verse 11. And verse 11 of Isaiah chapter 27 reads, "When the bows thereof are withered, they shall be broken off. The women come and set them on fire. For it is a people of no understanding. Our knowledge, our wisdom, and our understanding has been removed. Therefore, he that made them will not have mercy on them." The Most High had made and formed the children of Israel. And so therefore, when we start walking contrary to his law, he's going to reinforce it, meaning we're going to take these beatings that we've been getting. And he that formed them will show them no favor. And this is why in the midst of these many nations, we're not being shown any favor. We wanted wickedness. We wanted to go after the ways of wicked people. So we were shipped to the midst, in the midst of wicked people. We did not want to serve our strength, our God. So therefore, we were sent to serve the God of our enemies. So the God of our enemies is JC, and that is why we're serving him. We didn't want to serve the one and true God of Israel. We didn't want to obey the laws that were given in the landmass that we were specifically given. We wanted to seek after wickedness. We wanted to seek after vanity. We wanted to seek after the gods of our enemies. So what the Most High did is, this what you want? He delivered us into the hands of our enemies, and we're serving the gods of our enemies. And this is why we're shown no favor in the midst of these nations. All right, let's go to Isaiah chapter 26, and we'll read verse 19. Isaiah chapter 26, verse 19. "Thy dead men shall live. Together with my dead body shall they arise. Awake and sing, ye that dwell in dust." Awake and sing, ye that dwell in dust. That's the children of Israel. We are in the dust. "For thy dew is as the dew of herbs, and the earth shall cast out the dead." Now, if you reading this and think that Isaiah is coming back, that's not the case. Okay? "Thy dead men shall live." This is not dead people coming out of the ground. This is not a remake of the Thriller video. This is not happening. What this is pretty much speaking to is speaking to the children of Israel returning back onto the Most High's law, statutes, judgments, and precepts. Nothing more. Is that once we return back onto this law, we simply become alive, because now we can see where we're going. We can move with purpose. What has happened to the children of Israel is that we are a people on the face of the earth without purpose. And our purpose is to magnify the Most High's law and make it honorable, to teach his laws to all the nations, and to uphold the standard that we were given at Sinai. We are doing everything but that in the midst of these nations. Okay, so what we're doing, we're maneuvering without purpose. And once our purpose has been restored, then pretty much our lives are going to be restored. We're going to get out of this low state that we're in, down in the dust, down in the muck, down in the dirt. Okay, and we will elevate ourselves and stand up and do that which we were formed to do, and that is to bring forth the Most High's praise, to bring forth his righteousness, and teach his laws to these wicked people that we are in the midst in. So, man of Israel and a woman of Israel, as we are in these nations and you're seeing this wickedness, you're seeing this wickedness because this is what the people know. And the reason why things are a mess in the earth is because you have failed to stand in your lot. You have failed to do that which you're supposed to do. You're supposed to teach. You're supposed to teach this law. You're supposed to uphold this law by doing it. So we are to be an example of it. So if you're tired of the wickedness that you see every day in the midst of our own people, in the midst of your family, and in the midst of the heathen and in the nations in which we dwell, then become a man or woman of righteousness, that you may uphold the standard that we were given, and that you may teach it and live it. And that changes things around you, and that makes you an example for others to follow. So if you're tired of what you're seeing as far as wickedness goes, then be the one that shines the light, that those who seek after the light may come to it, and that is this law. All right. Now let's go to Isaiah chapter 24. Isaiah chapter 24, and we will read verse 5. Isaiah chapter 24 and verse 5 reads, "The earth also is defiled under the inhabitants thereof." They're tearing up the earth, "because they have transgressed the laws, changed the ordinances, and broken the everlasting covenant." All right. So the Most High is saying the earth is defiled by the inhabitants that live in it. So they're tearing it up, and we're helping them tear it up. "Because they have transgressed the laws." They who? The house of Israel has transgressed the laws, and the other peoples of the earth have always transgressed it and continue to do so. But there are no checks and balances. There's no one standing up and saying, hey, homosexuality is immoral. And two men being married is a disgusting thing. It's an abomination before the Most High. And killing people is a sin, and it's punishable by death and things of the like. And an abortion is an incorrect thing. A rape is incorrect. And laying down with a 10-year-old and a 15-year-old is incorrect. And murdering people, murdering our men in the street is incorrect. And our men murdering our men is incorrect. There's no truth and there's no light in the earth. So we have corrupted our way, and we have become more like the heathen. And these things are not to be. They have changed the ordinance. Okay, we were told strictly that, the Most High is one. They're teaching you the Most High is three. The Most High told us that he showed us and he saved us in the days of old. They're telling you that the Most High made himself come down onto the earth to save man and to be in the midst of man, and all this other manner of foolishness that you've been taught. And believe. All the ordinances have changed. Most High said this is the dietary law in Leviticus chapter 11. These are the things that you can eat, and these are the things that you're not allowed to eat. They tell you, hey, you can eat what you want, provided you put your hands together, sit on your butt, and pray. So they have not taught people how to pray correctly. They have taught people everything that's contrary to the Most High's law. This is the changing of the ordinance. The Most High said, I change not. So when you see changes, you know clearly it's not of the Most High, because the Most High is stating right here. Let me reread this for effect. Isaiah chapter 24, verse 5. "The earth also is defiled under the inhabitants thereof, because they have transgressed the laws." You're walking contrary to it. You're teaching things contrary to it. And you're doing and living in contrary to the Most High's law, walking in opposition to it. You're going against the grain. All right, so he's saying clearly they have transgressed the laws. They've changed the ordinances, and they've broken the everlasting covenant. So if the covenant has been broken, then what needs to happen now? There needs to be repairers of that breach. Where that wall has been broken, where that covenant has been broken, somebody in the house of Israel have got to stand up and say, you know what? We see that there's a breach in this wall, and this is causing our hurt. So the righteous men of Israel and the righteous women of Israel will have to stand up and bridge that gap and fix that breach. How will that be done? That breach can be fixed. It can be healed when the righteous men and women of Israel stand up and do the reverse of what we have just read. We've got to make sure the earth is not defiled by the inhabitants thereof, and they're defiling the earth by what they're doing. They're defiling their bodies by what they eat. And we're defiling ourselves by our actions that are contrary to this law. So if we're going to be repairers of the breach is we have transgressed the laws and broken the Most High's covenant and changed the ordinances. So what we will have to do in order to repair this breach and be repairers of this breach is to return back to the way things were at the first, and to teach our people to return back onto it, and that fixes what we have just read in Isaiah chapter 24, verse 5. All right, let's go ahead and let's turn to, we're going to go to Isaiah chapter 6. Isaiah chapter 6. Isaiah chapter 6, and we will read verse 9 and 10. Isaiah chapter 6, We're going to read verse 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. Isaiah chapter 6. And we will start off at verse 9. And verse 9 reads, And he said, Go and tell this people, Hear ye indeed, but understand not. And see ye indeed, but perceive not. Verse 10. Make the heart of this people fat, no understanding. And make their ears heavy, that they may hear and not understand. And shut their eyes, make them blind, lest they see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and understand with their hearts, and convert, and be healed. So in order for us to be healed, we have to convert back onto this law. We have been separated from the Most High because we have walked contrary onto his law. Okay? So we have been estranged from him. All right, estranged from the Most High because we figure, you know what, we're going to go our own way and do our own thing. Verse 11, Then said I, Yah, how long? And he answered, Until the cities be wasted without inhabitants, and the houses without man, and the land be utterly desolate. So how long was the Most High going to do this? He was going to do this until he removed us out of his land. Verse 12, And Yah have removed men far away, and there be a great forsaking in the midst of the land. So here we are on the other side of the earth. That's how far away we have been removed. Verse 13, But yet in it shall be a tenth, meaning there's going to be some people left there, and there's going to be some people that's going to return from these many nations back there. And it shall return, that's that tenth, and shall be eaten as a teal tree, and as an oak, whose substance is in them, when they cast their leaves. So the holy seed, the children of our forefathers, that's us, shall be the substance thereof. So in spite of our wickedness and our foulness, the Most High has extended his mercy unto the children of Israel. His mercy is his law. Through that law, this is how we become healed. So when we go into the law and we read it, and we read what those instructions are to us, once we decide, okay, we will not buck, we will not go against the Most High's word, we will not walk against the grain, we're not going to walk after the ways of our enemies. We're going to return back onto the way things were at the first, and we will follow the instruction given to us by the Creator himself. Once we decide to do that, that is the extension of his mercy. That is why, regardless of where you are in the earth, you have a quote-unquote Bible. You have the words of the Most High's laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts in your possession. That is why the Most High said clearly that his words are not afar off. It's not in the sky for someone to go get it. It's not in the sea for someone to go get it, or over the hills or wherever. It is nigh unto you. It is right there by your bedstand. It's right there in the back of your car, or it's somewhere in your house. His words are nigh unto you. It's in your possession. What you do not have, you have not converted to be healed. That's the problem. So in order for us to convert to be healed, first we must understand what righteousness is. So once we understand what righteousness is, righteousness teaches us and tells us clearly what wickedness is. So go into the law, you read it. You know the law is righteousness. So once you have read the Most High's law, then you take that standard and you put it up against the way you live and act. And where you see the discrepancies, where you are going contrary to it, then you change. It's not going to be an overnight thing, but you have to do it. And as you start to change, it's going to change people around you, i.e., they may see what you're doing and be inquisitive about it and may want to study and learn and do the things that you're doing. Others will remove themselves far from you. But do understand, when the Most High removes people out of your way, do not be foolish enough to go chasing after them. There's a reason why that's being done. So as you start to clean yourself up, shake yourself off from the dust and clean up yourself from this mess that we're in, there are going to be others who are messy that may want to cleave onto you. The Most High is going to separate you from them. So You're only going to be, the clean is going to be hanging out with the clean, and the dirty is going to be with the dirty. And you're going to have to be content with being in the midst of righteous people, because he's certainly going to separate you from those who are wicked and those who are quote unquote in the dust still. He's going to separate you from them, so be prepared for that. All right. So we have read all the way to verse 13, from 9 through 13. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 1. Isaiah chapter 1, and we will read verse 2 through verse 7. All right. And verse 2 of Isaiah chapter 1 reads, Hear, O heavens, and give ear, O earth, for Yah has spoken. I have nourished and brought up children, and they have rebelled against me. He has nourished the children of Israel, and he has brought them up. He has taught us in the way that we should go, and how we should properly honor him and walk in his laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts. But we rebelled against him and figure we do whatever it is we want to do. Verse 3, The ox knoweth his owner, and the ass his master's crib. But Israel does not know, my people doth not consider. So we're being considered, or being, made to have the understanding of an ass. And that's pretty bad. But that's how much our knowledge, wisdom, and understanding has been removed. So we do not know exactly who our God is. Keep in mind, when the Most High removed the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding from the children of Israel, not only did he remove the knowledge of who we were, he removed the knowledge of who he was as well. So we have been in these nations not knowing who we are and not knowing who our God is. Verse 4, sinful nation, a people laden with iniquity, full of sin, a seed of evildoers, children that are corrupt as word just foul. They have forsaken Yah. How? We've taken his law, chucked it up and chucked it behind our back, balled it up, threw it behind our back. They have provoked the Holy One, not the Holy Two or the Holy Three. They have provoked the Holy One of Israel unto anger. They are gone away backwards. In other words, we are in full reverse. All right, so if we're going to actually correct ourselves, we need to make a 180, because we're going in reverse. All right, now we're going to go to verse 5. Why should ye be stricken any more? Ye will revolt more and more. The whole head is sick, and the whole heart is faint. So the Most High is saying, why am I going to continue to beat you down? The more I punish you, the more you revolt. And we certainly can bear witness to this when we look at our people throughout the earth today. Verse 6. From the soles of the foot, even unto the head, there is no soundness in it. Knowledge, wisdom, and understanding has been removed. You can't even be reasoned with. You are unreasonable. But wounds and bruises and petrifying sores, they have not been closed, neither bound up, neither mollified with ointment. So our bruises and our sores have not been tended to. We have had no ointment placed upon it. Okay? So, we have these petrifying sores and these bruises and these wounds. Okay? And they have not been mollified. There has been no ointment placed upon it by which to get rid of the bacteria. It's not been wrapped. It's not been protected. So we're out here getting these beatings, these bruises, these sores, and there's no cure for it. But I'm telling you that the cure is, and the fix is, the Most High's laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts. That is the cure. Verse 7. Your country is desolate. So you actually have a country. You actually have a place that you belong that has borders. And a country that has borders has laws. Your cities are burned with fire, and so are you. Your land, strangers devour it in your presence, and it is desolate, as overthrown by strangers. So strangers have taken over everything that you've got, and all that belongs to you, the strangers now have it in their possession, and you're allowing this thing to happen. And the reason why you're allowing it to happen, you don't even know that that belongs to you in the first place. All right, let's move to, we're going to stay in Isaiah chapter 1. Let's move to verse 25. Before we do that, let's go ahead and read For effect, verse 15 of Isaiah chapter 1. Let me read that for effect before we continue. Verse 15 of Isaiah chapter 1 reads, "And when ye spread forth your hands," meaning when you pray, you do not clasp your hands. We extend our hands towards heaven with our knees being upon both of our knees, and we face Jerusalem from the lands of our captivity when we pray. So when you read here at Isaiah chapter 15, and when ye spread forth your hands, that means when you pray. All right, once again, verse 15 of Isaiah chapter 1. "And when ye spread forth your hands, I will hide mine eyes from you." Meaning when we started to pray to the Most High, he was going to hear what we had to say. "When ye make many prayers, I will not hear. Your hands are full of blood." So here we are in the midst of these nations. Our hands are full of blood. We're in idolatry, adultery, murder, lies, and bribes. So our hands are full of blood in the midst of these nations. And we turn to the Most High with bloody hands and lift that towards heaven. He's not even trying to hear what you've got to say. All right, now, let's go. We're in the same chapter. We're going to move to verse 25. Verse 25, we'll read 25 all the way through 25 through 29. And verse 25 of Isaiah chapter 1 reads, "And I will turn my hand upon thee, and purely purge away thy dross, and take away all thy tin." He's going to turn his hand toward us and remove all the impurities. Verse 26, "And I will restore thy judges." Our judges were the Levites, the priests, "as at the first." So the Most High is saying he's going to return everything as at the first. So whatever it is you're seeing right now, we are going back to the way things were at the first. So be prepared for that. And many of the house of Israel can't imagine going back to the way things were at the first. At the first, we didn't have fighter jets. We didn't have machine guns. Okay, so all the things, we didn't have the computer and all these other things that we're seeing right now. So many of our people, if there's a choice to returning back onto the way things were at the first, where there are no planes, trains, and automobiles, there are many of our people that would rather die than to go back to a life like that. Consider them dead already. All right, let me reread verse 26 of Isaiah chapter 1. "And I will restore thy judges as at the first." We're going back to the way things were in the times of old. "And thy counselors as at the beginning." So everything is going, we're going back there. "Afterwards, thou shalt be called the city of righteousness, the faithful city." So once we return back onto that land, we go back to the way things were at the first. Our judges will be restored as at the first, and our counselors. Now, let me touch on that before we move to verse 27. If you're going to have a judge, that certainly means that there have to be laws in place. This is common sense. Counselors will be counseled in the correct way by which we should walk. That's that law. So if our judges are going to be restored at the first where we're not given laws, these are some of the things that we must consider when our enemies come before us and tell us that there is no law and someone died for you, so therefore we don't have to walk in law. This is the ignorance of our people in listening to what our enemies are saying. Verse 27, "Zion shall be redeemed with judgment," not with money. Redeemed with judgment. Judgment means there's a judge, and judgment means there are laws in place. And the judgment means judgment is punishment for breaking of law. All right. So we're going to be redeemed with judgment, and her converts with righteousness. So those who convert back onto the Most High's law, statutes, judgments, and precepts, those are the ones that's going to be saved. Those are the ones that's going to be redeemed. And the ones that refuse to turn, well, he's going to kill them. Simple as that. Now, verse 28. "And the destruction of the transgressors," that's sinners, "and of the sinners shall be together." So all those who are rebels, those who are transgressors, Those who are sinners, those of us who refuse to adhere to the Most High's law, won't hear it, won't do it. He's going to kill them. He's going to kill all of them together, regardless of their nation, whether you are Israel or not of the house of Israel. If you are a rebel and a transgressor and refuse to turn back and to convert back onto these laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts, he's going to kill you. And they that forsake Yah shall be consumed. To forsake the Most High means you have absolutely no regard for his laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts, and you balled it up, chuck it behind your back. There is no law. So you're going to be consumed. Simple word for that is you will be killed. And the last verse, verse 29. For they shall be ashamed of the oaks which ye have desired, and ye shall be confounded for the guards that ye have chosen. So you're going to be ashamed when all of this is placed before you and you begin to understand how stupid you have been, how blind you have been, how lacking in knowledge you have been. Many of you who are now at this channel, some of you are coming from other places, some of you are at other places, and my suggestion to you is gain as much knowledge as you can. I don't care where you get it from. Get as much knowledge as you can pertaining to this word. And then once you gain that knowledge, do your job. Your part is to teach it and to live it. So many of you who have come from white supremacy, aka Christianity, you are, once you gain an understanding of the Most High's law, statutes, judgments, and precepts, and you actually go in here and read this thing, you become real sick to your stomach and disgusted. You wonder, how could I have been so stupid? This has been here all along. I never read it, and when I did read it, I didn't understand it. So you become ashamed for your foolishness. But this is prophecy fulfilled. The Most High said clearly he would take away our knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. That we would read this book, and it would be as a book that is sealed. We will not have our knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. But then he stated that he would also pour out his knowledge upon all flesh, especially that of the children of Israel. And that we will learn doctrine. We will come up, we will wake up from the dust, and knowledge will be increased. And that we will go from not understanding this book at all and walking after what our enemies told us, then all of a sudden we become smarter. Our knowledge become increased. And then we go into this book, and that which we could not understand, we can now understand. And once you understand it, you're embarrassed. You're disgusted. You're sickened by it because you realize that you're in error. However, you are saddened by the fact that you can clearly see it when you could not see it before. And now you're wondering, how come your grandma can't see it? How come your mother can't see it? How come your father is unwilling to see it? How come your uncle can't see it? And how come no one around you can see that which is plain for you to see? But when you're teaching others, always keep in mind, at one point, you could not see this either. So, as stiff-necked and stubborn as our people are, you understand that they are the Most High's people, and you must understand that they are our family members, even though they may want to fight you. So we are still to have compassion upon the Most High's people. We are the Most High's people. So when you look at your people, even though they are certainly transgressors and they are rebels, we must always keep in mind that these people are the apple of the Most High's eye. This is the Most High's people, so are we. And we are to have compassion on them, and we are to correct them. Even if they refuse that correction, the Most High deals with them. But we are not to be, we're not to deal with our people in a heartless manner. Okay, this is something that plagues our people. We have no compassion for each other. Some of our people have never had their own people treat them with any kind of kindness. So what we have to do, we have to repair this breach. There's a break of trust in the midst of our people. Our men treat our women foul, and then our women grow up or become bitter towards our men because of the men that has broken their trust, broken their heart with unrighteous behavior. So we have to restore the trust with our women. A lot of our brothers have betrayed each other, have said damaging things to each other, have harmed each other physically and things of the like. We have to heal this. We have to fix this. And we have to start showing compassion towards each other. That is easy to do once we turn towards this law, statutes, judgments, and precepts. Because once we return unto the Most High's law, then we become alive. We become awake. Okay, we clean ourselves up, and we don't want to deal with things that's in the dust. All right, we're now able to see the things that are errors. We're able to see the traps that's placed before us. And once we can see, and there's light before us, and there's understanding within our hearts, we will certainly treat our people differently. So we are to mend that gap in the midst of ourselves. Don't forget that. All right, so we have read verse 29, okay, pertaining to our people being ashamed. You're going to be ashamed for all the madness that you have been doing once you've come to remembrance and you're awake and realize, oh, we're in this New Testament and we're not supposed to be here. This is incorrect. Okay, now you have to go back and tell people that that's wrong. And when you try to do that, they're going to want to fight you. You're still to have compassion upon them. They're just blind. That's all. All right, let's go to Proverbs. Let's go to Proverbs. Proverbs, verse 21. Chapter 21, excuse me. Proverbs. Proverbs chapter 21, and we will read verse 16. And verse 16 of Proverbs chapter 21 reads. Verse 16 reads, "The man that wandereth out of the way of understanding shall remain in the congregation of the dead." The way of understanding is the Most High's law, statutes, judgments, and precepts. Once you return unto the Most High's law, statutes, judgments, and precepts, by way of walking in His law, that's how your knowledge is increased and your wisdom is increased. So when you decide to stay in the way of the dead, quote unquote, the congregation of the dead, that happens when you stray away from the law. So once you move away from the law, now all of a sudden there is no light. You understand? There's no light. There's no direction. There are no laws for you to follow. So you doing what you want to, that means that you're in absolute darkness. So we're not to stray away. We're not to wander away from the way of understanding. And the way of understanding is the Most High's law. For when you do this, then you become in the congregation of the dead. I spoke earlier about the earth being in gross darkness. What that means is that the people of the earth right now are in the congregation of the dead. The dead simply means the people that are in the dust, the people that lack understanding. They're still alive, they're breathing, they're walking, they're talking, they're doing everything, but they're not doing it within the confines of the Most High's law. And so once you decide to walk in the congregation of the dead, the end result of you will be that you will be killed. You will be literally dead if you decide to stay in the congregation of the dead, i.e., walking contrary to the Most High's laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts. Now, let's go to, still in Proverbs, we will read Proverbs 6, verse 23. And Proverbs 6, verse 23 reads, "For the commandment is a lamp. A lamp illuminates, shines light in darkness, so that you and those around you may be able to see. No one holds a light behind them. A light is held up front. And the law is light," meaning with this law, you're able to see exactly where you're going. You can avoid all the traps and the snares that's before you and that have been laid at your feet. And reproof of instruction are the way of life. In other words, this law teaches you how to conduct yourself throughout your life. Meaning, if you're a man of principle, you're a man of this law. If anyone knows you and a situation arises, they can tell you exactly how this man is going to respond, even if he's nowhere in sight. This is a man of the Most High's law. If such and such happens, he's not going to go for it because he walks in this law. So if you're in this law, your actions are predictable because you are going to adhere to standard. All right. So we are to keep this lamp before us. We're to keep these commandments before us, for as a lamp and the law is a light, it allows us to see where we're going. That way we're not bumping into walls and going around in circles. And if you don't have this light, which is this law, then that means you are in darkness. That's why the Most High said the earth is in total darkness. They are operating without light. They're operating without law. They're operating without the Most High's commandments. The commandments are confined. You have to go a certain way, and that's straight ahead. Now, when you're in darkness, there is no way. You're going any which way, forward, backwards, sideways, and everything else. So I hope that becomes clear to those of you that we are to walk in commandment, we're to walk in Torah, we're to walk in this light, and we're to make that light shine while we're at it too. All right, now let's move to Ezekiel. We're going to read all of Ezekiel. Ezekiel chapter 37. Ezekiel chapter 37, so you understand that, you know, dead men is not coming out of the ground. It's simply men that's alive, that's running around, breathing, talking crazy, but they're breathing and they're talking. And they are not in the Most High's law. They do not have the Most High's light before them. And so therefore, by virtue of them being in the congregation of the dead, they're dead. But they're still breathing. And the duty of those of us who are in this law, who are teaching it, is to awake this dead man. And that dead man is the entire house of Israel. All right, Ezekiel chapter 37. Ezekiel chapter 37. We're reading the whole thing. All right. Ezekiel chapter 37 verse 1 reads, "The hand of Yah was upon me, and carried me out in the spirit of Yah, and set me down in the midst of the valley, which was full of bones." So Ezekiel was taken up. He's in the spirit. He sees all this valley that's full of bones. Verse 2, "And caused me to pass by them round about, and behold, there were very many in the open valley, and lo, they were very dry." So all of these dry bones just laid out, scattered all over the place. Verse 3, "And he said unto me, Son of man, can these bones live? And I answered, O Yah, thou knowest." Verse 4, "Again he said unto me, Prophesy unto these bones, and say unto them, O ye dry bones, hear the words of Yah." So the Most High is telling Ezekiel to prophesy unto these bones. All right? And what is he telling the bones? He's telling the bones, hear the words of Yah. That's what he's telling the bones. You hear the words of Yah, and everything is we're going to fix this thing. So what I'm telling you, O dead man of Israel, O dead woman of Israel, who can breathe but's dead, who can see but is blind as a bat, who can hear but can't hear this law, whose heart has been made fat but can't understand nothing. What I'm telling you is hear the words of the Most High. That's what I'm going to tell you. And I'm going to tell you, read the words of the Most High. And I'm going to tell you, walk in the laws of the Most High. And to do that which you read, do his word. And that's the cure for your ills. All right. Verse 5, "Thus saith Yah, unto these bones, behold, I will cause breath to enter into you, and ye shall live." So by the breath of the Most High, that he was going to cause these bones to live. Verse 6, "And I will lay sinew," that's like tendons and tissue, okay, "upon you. I will bring up flesh upon you, and cover you with skin, and put breath in you, and ye shall live. And ye shall know that I am Yah." So the Most High was going to take these bones, and he was going to put tendons on them. He was going to put flesh on them, and he was going to cover them with skin, and put breath in them, and they shall live. Now think about this. The Most High is not bringing forth. Keep in mind, when we start talking about life and we're talking about living, those two things, they both have purpose. A cockroach has a purpose. Any type of tree has a purpose. Any type of animal has a purpose. Any type of man has a purpose. And that purpose is divine. which means whatever that purpose is, you can't change it. So the Most High is not going to give a man life or bring a man to life, and there's no purpose for him. So before you get life, you have a purpose. I hope you understand that. All right. Verse 7. So I prophesied, and I was commanded so I prophesied as I was commanded. And as I prophesied, there was a noise, and behold, a shaking, and the bones came together, bone to his bone. Verse 8. And when I beheld, lo, the sinews and the flesh came up upon them, and the skin covered them above, but there was no breath in them. So here you are, you have these people who are, they're standing, they have the sinew, they have the tendons, the flesh came upon them, skin came upon, they have everything. You have a person, but there's no breath in them. So they're not quite alive just yet. Verse 9. Then said he unto me, prophesy unto the wind. Prophesy, son of man, and say to the wind, thus saith Yah, come from the four winds, O breath, and breathe upon these slain that they may live. So they're already standing up. They were down in the dust. Most High got these bones up, put some flesh on them, put some sinew on them. They're standing up. So now he's causing for the breath of life to come into them. All right, that they may live. Verse 10. So I prophesied as he commanded me, and the breath came into them, and they lived, and stood up upon their feet, an exceeding great army. So now you have breath in them, and all of these people are standing up, great in number. Verse 11. Then he said unto me, son of man, these bones are the whole house of Israel. Let me go ahead and read that again. Because you're thinking that dead men are coming up out the ground like a thriller video, and that somehow you're going to die, you're coming alive, and all this other madness. You have to understand the context by which this stuff is written. Once again, verse 11. Then said he unto me, he who, this is the Most High speaking unto Ezekiel, son of man, these bones are the whole house of Israel, the sons and daughters of the Most High, down in the dust, being awakened, being put, the breath of life is being placed into them. That's the law. They say our bones are dried, and our hope is lost. We are cut off for our parts. Once you walk against the Most High's law, statutes, judgments, and precepts, he cuts you off. Once you've been cut off, that means your ability to understand is gone. Your ability to see is gone. Your ability to perceive is gone. Your leaders, he's going to remove them. And all of your counselors and your judges, he's going to confound them, which means you're on your own. It's like being in the wilderness. A wilderness is a very dangerous place, inhospitable. All right? We are in the wilderness of the nations right now. All right? And the wilderness is where you have the lions, the tigers, and bears. You have no protection out here. And the only protection that we have is returning back onto this law. So you see where it states here, our bones are dried and our hope is lost. That is why you can always come to the house of Israel, aka black people, and you can always teach and preach and bring forth hope to our people, because we are always in a state of hopelessness. They don't take this hope speech to anyone else, only to our people, for we are in a perpetual state of hopelessness. All right, verse 12. Therefore prophesy and say unto them, thus saith Yah, behold, O my people, I will open your graves and cause you to come up out of your graves and bring you into the land of Israel. Okay. Open up your graves and cause you to come into the land of Israel. Our graves are these many nations in which we're in. Our graves are all the vanity that we've taken a hold of. This is killing us. These things are causing us to pine away in the midst of these nations. So when he's opening up our graves, that's him extending mercy to us. And the only way he does that, as far as extending his mercy to us, is his law. His law is an extension of his mercy. Through his law, we find what's known as grace. Grace is mercy. So once we turn back onto his law, then he forgives us. Then our sins are cleansed. But we're going to have to walk in some commandments first. All right. So he's going to cause us to, he's going to bring us back into the land of Israel. We're in these different nations, pining away and dying because we've taken a hold of lies, vanity, things that where therein is no profit. Profit us for nothing, following after the foolishness of these people that's around us. But he's going to give us an out, and that out is his law. Verse 30. And ye shall know that I am Yah when I have opened your graves, O my people, and brought you up out of your graves. All right. Like I've said, all of our graves are the wickedness that we take part in these nations. And shall put my spirit in you. That's the awakening of the house of Israel, waking up you dead people. And ye shall live, and I shall place you in your own land. Then shall ye know that I, Yah, have spoken it and performed it, saith Yah. So the Most High says he's going to put his spirit upon us. That's him putting his breath into us. That's him putting life into us. That's him putting the law into us. Because once we are in this law, we're alive. We can now see. We can now hear. We can now understand. And with that law, we are now able to see that which is wicked and perverse versus that which is righteous. We can now make a distinction between the two. We can now make a distinction between the lies of our enemies and the righteousness of the Most High, something that we were not able to perceive before because we have been in the dust. We did not have the Most High Spirit upon us. That spirit of discernment was not there because we could not see, we could not hear, we could not understand. And we were as drunk men in the congregation of the dead. But now that the Most High has poured his Spirit out upon us, now we have knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. He has extended his mercy towards us, so now we have his law. And once we have his law, we've got light. Now we can see where we're going. I hope that's making sense to you. Verse 15. The word of Yah came unto me, saying, Moreover, thou son of man, take thee one stick and write upon it for Judah and for the children of Israel his companions. Then take another stick and write upon it for Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, and for all the house of Israel his companions. And join them one to another into one stick, and they shall become one in thine hand. So there's going to be a joining of the two nations, which is actually one. The south and the north. Ephraim or Israel or Samaria, they're referred to as those three. That's the north. And Judah in the south or Jerusalem. They're going to be combined as one stick, which meaning that simply means that there's going to be a joining of the family that's been broken up. We're actually one nation, we're one family. However, we have been broken up and scattered throughout the earth. And we're going to come together as one stick. And the only way that we're coming together under one umbrella is going to be under this law. And that's it. It's not going to be coming from this camp and that camp and over here and over there. It's not going to be some people talking about the Most High and his laws, and then you have another camp over here talking about the Most High and his laws and black JC. These are all confusion. It's going to be one standard, and that standard is going to be that which we had at the first. If we didn't have JC at the first, then you know whomever's teaching this is wrong. So when we go back to the first, you've got to go back to all the things that we had back then. Okay? Now, so we understand clearly that these two houses, the north and the south, will be made one. And this is the only way by which we will be united and will be reconciled. We will be reconciled unto each other when we first reconcile ourselves unto the Most High. Verse 18. And when the children of thy people shall speak unto thee, saying, Wilt thou not show us what thou meanest by these? Say unto them, Thus saith Yah, Behold, I will take the stick of Joseph, which is in the hand of Ephraim, and the tribes of Israel his fellows, and will put them with him, even with the stick of Judah, and make them one stick, and they shall be one in mine hand. So the Most High is going to have the house of Israel being reunited. And that reunification is not happening unless we first, as individuals, reconcile ourselves back onto his laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts. And once we do that, then we will see eye to eye, both north and south. Verse 20. And the sticks whereon thou writest shall be in thine hand before thine eyes. And say unto them, Thus saith Yah, Behold, I will take the children of Israel from among the heathen, whither they be gone, and will gather them on every side, and bring them into their land. All right, so for those of you who thinking that we were going to have a remake or thriller of some dead people just coming alive and because they were actually physically dead, that is not the case. That is not the case. This verse 21 backs up the previous verses that we have just read. So, for example, you can take verse 21 and look at verse 10. So I prophesied as he commanded me, and the breath came into them, and they lived and stood up upon their feet, an exceedingly great army. Okay, and then he speaks to where he will return us back into the land of Israel. You read all of that if you want to understand what Ezekiel chapter 37 is about. You have to understand how to put all of this together in context. So what you're reading about the bones being put together, it's giving you an understanding of what he's doing as far as waking up the people of Israel that's been in the dust. They're still alive. They're not physically dead. For a better understanding, it would be they are spiritually dead. That's one best way to understand that. So once the Most High places his spirit upon us, that's who he's going to be taking. The ones that awaken themselves from the dust, understand that we are to return back onto his law, statutes, judgments, and precepts. Those of us he will gather out of these nations and return us back onto the land of Israel. There will not be ghosts returning back there. Just so we understand the context of what we're reading. All right. So the Most High said that he would gather us on every side from all these nations where he done scattered and kicked us out. He's going to bring us out of our graves because we've been dying in these nations. We've been pining away in them. So he's going to extend his mercy upon us by pouring out his spirit upon us, causing us to understand what our errors are. And then once we understand that, those of us that are of a contrite spirit will return back onto his laws. And once we do that, that's when he's going to gather us out of these nations and return us back onto the land that he had promised unto our forefathers. Verse 22, and I will make them one nation in the land upon the mountains of Israel. That's the two sticks, north and south, being put together. Will be one nation as at the first. And one king shall be king over them all. That king will be David, a descendant of David. David is dead and gone. He will never come back. He is still here via his seed. And there shall be no more two nations, neither shall there be divided into two kingdoms anymore. So we will be one nation. We will no longer be a divided nation, Samaria up north and Judah down south. All right. Verse 23. Neither shall they defile themselves anymore with their idols. So all these idols are going to be removed. Why? Because we begin to understand where we have made errors, and we're going to correct ourselves. We're going to be of a contrite spirit. Nor with their detestable things, all your foul acts and your foul foods, nor with any of their transgressions. We will not be sinning against the Most High's laws, because we're going to understand that his laws still stand. But I will save them out of all their dwelling places, all the many nations in which we dwell, wherein they have sinned. We've been running around talking about God is three people and some white man coming out the sky to save you, all this other nonsense. And you're going into God's house and all this other foolishness that we've been doing in these nations. I will cleanse them from all this pig you've been eating and all the other unclean things that you eat in these nations. So will they be my people, and I will be their God, and I will be their strength. So once we return back onto this, he's going to save us from our dwelling place. He's going to deliver us out of these places. All right? All of these places where we have sinned, we've been walking contrary towards his law. And then he's going to cleanse us, get us out of this dust. We dirty. He's got to clean us up. And then we're going to understand that he is our strength. And when he does all of this, we're going to be embarrassed for being so stupid in all of these nations. Verse 24. And David, my servant, shall be king over them. Yes, David, his servant, a son of David. I don't care if you 10,000 generations down the line, it's still David. It's his seed. So don't think that this is actual David, the son of Jesse, coming alive. That's not the case. All those lines from Solomon all the way on, All of those men are David. Every last one of them, they're his seed. So a son of David is going to be governor over us. And they shall have one shepherd. That one shepherd is going to be that governor, that seed of David. And they shall also walk in my judgments. That's walking in his law, statutes, judgments, and precepts. And observe my statutes and do them. That goes out to any of you that thinks that there is no law and the Most High is just lawless. When you can look around you every day and see when the trees come, when the sun comes, when the rain comes, when the hurricane comes, everything comes in its due season. Everything is in order. Somehow you see all that and you think that the Most High has no law and no order. Now that is fascinating. But that's part of that, you being dumb. You're deaf and blind in these nations. Verse 25, and they shall dwell in the land that I have given unto Jacob my servant, wherein your fathers have dwelt. And they shall dwell therein, even they and their children's children forever. And my servant David shall be their prince forever. So, for as long as the house of Israel is established as one nation, a seed of David will always sit upon that throne before the Most High. He will be there forever. 10,000 generations down the line is going to be a seed of David. You can't sit on that throne unless you have a direct lineage to that man, because it is still him sitting there via his seed. So he will always be the prince over us. Always. Just like Aaron will always be the priest over us. All of his sons. Aaron is dead and gone. Aaron will always be the priest. His sons will always be. David is dead and gone. David will always be the prince over us. He will always be via his seed. All right. Verse 26. Moreover, I will make a covenant of peace with them. You can stop busting us over the head. It shall be an everlasting covenant with them, and I will place them and multiply them, and will set my sanctuary in the midst of them forevermore. All right. Well, he wouldn't need to do this if that church you go to was the sanctuary, now would he? Huh? Just think about that. You talking about you going up to the altar in your church and you going in the sanctuary and all this other nonsense. Most High is stating that he's going to make a covenant of peace with us. You have no peace right now, no matter where you are on the earth. And the Most High said that covenant of peace will be everlasting with them who? The house of Israel. And I will place them and multiply them. Places where? Places into the land of our forefathers. And he will multiply us. Our numbers will increase. You won't be aborting your babies, and people won't be killing your kids in your sight. And will set my sanctuary in the midst of them forevermore. His sanctuary will be in the midst of us, because he's going to be dwelling in Jerusalem with us. All right. Verse 27. My tabernacle also shall be with them. So the Most High's tabernacle is not in America. It's not here in South Carolina or any place else. That's going to be with us. His tabernacle will be with us. Okay? So you say, my tabernacle also shall be with them. Yea, I will be their strength, and they shall be my people, as they have always been, as he has formed us to be. Verse 28. And the heathen meaning all these other nations other than the house of Israel, shall know that I, Yah, do sanctify Israel, when my sanctuary shall be in the midst of them forevermore. So they're going to understand clearly who the house of Israel is when they know good and well the God of the whole earth, his sanctuary is in the midst of his people. And that will clearly identify who his people are. And right now, for as long as the Jews have been in the land mass of Israel, Most High doesn't have any sanctuary in the midst of them. They're all stating that they returned. They sent planes and gathered them from all these many nations and put them in the land, saying, okay, God's people have returned. The question is, where's the Most High sanctuary in the midst of you? Where's that third temple? You can't build it, for you are not the house of Israel. All right. So we have covered Ezekiel chapter 37 to where you understand clearly the valley of dry bones being awakened, coming out of the dust, is nothing but the children of Israel who have been stiff-necked and stubborn in the nations, who have taken the Most High's laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts, balled it up, chucked it behind their backs, and talking about some European man died for you, and there is no law, and God is three entities, and all this other madness, and that you're going to live forever and go up in the sky, and that the church you're going to is the house of God, and all these other manners of errors that you're doing in the midst of these nations. Most High is going to pour out his spirit upon you and cause you to see the error of your ways. All right, let's move to Psalms. All right, moving to Psalms. Some of you may already know where we're going right now. Psalms 119, 142. And Psalms 119, 142 reads, Thy righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and thy law is the truth. Now, the whole of Psalms 119 is just powerful. But this 119, 142, I start all lessons with this and finish my lessons with this because it encompasses what this whole channel is about and what our purpose really is about. The Most High's righteousness is everlasting, meaning it cannot be destroyed, it cannot be changed. It's everlasting. His righteousness is truth. Truth is everlasting. His law is the truth. So therefore, when you seek to remove the Most High's law, you seek to remove righteousness. When you seek to remove the Most High's law, you seek to remove truth. When you seek to remove the Most High's law, you're seeking to remove the Most High. For the Most High is truth and the Most High is righteousness. So when you try to talk about there is no law, you might as well go ahead and say there is no God, because that's what you're saying in essence. When you're saying there is no law, then you're stating that there is no truth. And with no truth, then you're dealing with nothing but lies. So when you're saying that there is no law, you're stating there is no righteousness. And if there is no righteousness, then all that you have is unrighteousness. So there's a whole lot in that right there. Now, let's jump to 51. Same chapter, verse 51. Thou art near, O Yah, how so? This law right here, he's near. Every last one of you got it. And all thy commandments are true. So we already know that because we read 119, 142. So if his commandments are true, and someone is telling you there are no laws and there are no commandments, then someone is trying to entice you into thinking that truth doesn't matter. And there is no truth. Let's move to verse 152. Concerning thy testimonies. Not testimony, that's one. Testimonies, several. I have known of old that thou hast founded them forever. In other words, his testimony is his word. His laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts. His commandments. And there are more than 10 of those. So this is being stated here that he has known this from old. He has founded them forever, meaning they are perpetual and they are not to be changed. And I hope that's understood. All right, now let's go back to Isaiah. Going back to Isaiah chapter 43. Isaiah chapter 43, and we'll read verse 8. Isaiah chapter 43 and verse 8 reads, Bring forth the blind people that have eyes. Who are those people? The children of Israel. Bring them forth. Bring them out of these nations where I've scattered them. Bring them forth. All right. Bring forth the blind people that have eyes and the deaf that have ears. So take these blind people, bring them forward. Bring them forward, the whole house of Israel. Bring them out of these nations. Let them stand up. Verse 9. Let all the nations be gathered together, all of them, and let the people be assembled. And then ask these people this: who among all of you can declare this and show us former things? So take the house of Israel, wake them up, gather them, bring them before me. Get all these other nations and assemble them too. And let all of them declare who have shown former things. So all the nations are going to have to go back into these scrolls and see if JC ever showed them some former things. All the children of Israel have to go back into these scrolls and see if JC ever showed us, or saved us in the former days. It says here, let them bring forth their witnesses, that they may be justified, or let them hear and say it is true. So all the house of Israel has got to be gathered together, and all of these nations. And the Most High is going to say, well, show me where any of you can show me where JC prophesied, or any of these idols of these nations have ever shown you anything in the days of old. And that's when the Most High said here in verse 10, ye are my witness. Remember, witness sees. Saith Yah, my servant, whom I have chosen, that ye may know, have knowledge of, and believe me, and understand that I am he. Before me there was no God formed, and neither shall there be after me. And with that eliminates your JC. Because when the Most High is going to ask you, show me where any of this has been declared by any of these nations in the days of old, you don't have any witness to present any information to validate where what you're seeing and what you're hearing has been prophesied by any idol. So you're going to have to admit that the words of the Most High is true. All right. Now, Isaiah 29. We're almost finished. Isaiah 29, chapter 29. All right. At Isaiah chapter 29, we will read verse 24. Verse 24 of Isaiah chapter 29 reads, they also that erred in spirit, those of you running around in these nations, eating what you want, doing what you want, praying how you want, and to whomever you want, and marrying whomever you want, and doing all manner of foul in these nations, shall come to understanding how, when the Most High pours out His Spirit upon you, because you've been unconscious, you've been acting as a drunk man, you've been a blind man, you're a man that can't hear, and a man that can't understand, and a man that's moving around in a bunch of darkness. You've got no light because you have not taken a hold of the Most High's commandments. They that murmur shall learn doctrine. You're out here murmuring. God is three people, the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. That's that you murmuring. I'm going to go to the church house. I'm going to God's house. That's the church. You murmur. White man died for you, went up into heaven and prepared a place for you someplace in heaven. You're murmuring. Lacking understanding. You understand? So let me reread that one more time. Isaiah chapter 29, verse 24. They also that erred in spirit shall come to understanding. In other words, all you dummies are going to get smart. And they that murmured shall learn doctrine. They that walked in error. They that took the Most High's laws, balled it up, chucked it behind their backs. Those who've been bumped in the walls for the past few centuries. All of a sudden you're able to see. Now you understand where your errors have been. And now it's time to repair that breach. Now it's time to reconcile yourselves back onto the Most High. And once we do that, then the Most High will reconcile us back onto each other. But we first must reconcile ourselves as individuals back onto Him. And that is how the nation becomes healed. All right, now, in closing, I like to say this. Why would a righteous man in whose heart is the Most High's law contend with a drunk man that cannot see, cannot hear, cannot understand, and is in a deep sleep? He's dead. So why would a man who has the Most High's law in his heart, he can see, he can understand, and his wisdom has been returned back onto him. He has risen up out of the dust. Why would you contend, sit there and debate and argue with a blind man, with a deaf man, with a man that's drunk, with a man that has no understanding, with a dead man? He's in the congregation of the dead. All his knowledge, wisdom, and understanding has been removed. He's bumping into walls he can't see, he can't hear. Do not get into conversations with dead men. It's foolish. When the Most High pours out his spirit upon that man, and it's time for him to get himself up out of the dust, he will. I've done the video in times past. Your enemies are coming. These dead men are your enemies. But once the Most High pours his spirit out, some of them will convert and be healed. And they're going to come and tell you, brother, I didn't hear it. I didn't want to hear anything that you were saying earlier. Couldn't stand it, etc., etc. But now I understand. Now I can see. My wisdom has been returned unto me, and I was incorrect. And I now walk in the Most High's laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts. These things are going to happen. So, he's a dead man. Do not waste your time contending with dead men. The man is drunk. The man can't see. The man can't hear. What you arguing with him for? All right. However, though that man is dead, he can be alive, and he can come alive, and he can be awakened via the Most High's law. So, the question now is, well, brother, how do you know all this? I know all this because I'm supposed to know this. But guess what? You're supposed to know it too. So, let's go ahead and do that which we are or were formed to do. That which we are ordained to do. That is to uphold the Most High's laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts. We are to uphold that standard in the midst of ourselves first. You want to go out in the street and teach this to people? No, you don't. You want to teach this in your house. You want to live it in your house. When we're in the street, many people, you don't have the time to teach this. This is something that every man needs to sit down and decipher, and woman, for themselves. And that takes time, months, weeks, years. It is not an overnight thing. That's why I'm stating that this format is a wonderful thing, because I don't have to get out here and contend with dead people. I simply put forth the information. And when the Most High pours out his spirit upon that individual in the earth, wherever he may be, this challenge just pops up. And all of a sudden, he's able to receive this information. And he can receive it without having to ask a billion questions and contend with what he's hearing. He first has to have some information first. And once you have some knowledge, then you can possibly contend. But you can't contend with something that you don't know or understand. That's impossible. So everyone that's in the diaspora, that's down in the dust, they may not all be there. Some will be awakened and reap the benefits of walking in the Most High's law. Some of them will always stay in the dust and will die in the dust and will pine away in the nations of their captivity, for they will not turn back onto the Most High's law, statutes, judgments, and precepts. So some is going to return, stand up out of this dust, and have everlasting life. They're going to turn to the Most High's law, statutes, judgments, and precepts, them, their house, and their children. The Most High is going to bless them with seed that will always be before him to actually to walk in his law, statutes, judgments, and precepts, and that's how they get that everlasting life. Turn back onto the law. The Most High blesses them. They have children. Their children walk in that law. They have more children. The Most High bless them to where they can stay on this earth. And then there are those that will die and stay in the dust, that will hear this word and will not take heed to it, and he's going to kill them. And it's really that simple. So that completes this lesson. Waking up dead people. The dead people are the house of Israel, who have been in the dust, who have been in the dark, who have been without the light, without knowledge, without wisdom, without understanding, not knowing who they are, not knowing who God is, specifically their God. But as he pours out his spirit upon us, and our knowledge become increased, and we now have the power of discernment between that which is righteous and that which is unrighteous, then we have a decision to make. Do we become repairers of the breach and reconcile ourselves back onto the Most High? And once we do that, then he reconciles us back onto each other as a nation and brings those two sticks together. We can either become repairers of the breach, or what we can do, we can be like, you know what? I'm not trying to hear any of that. I'm going to walk in the ways of my enemies. I'm going to stay in the dust. And the one that makes that choice certainly will be removed from the earth. Peace, Israel, and Yah bless. Thy righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and thy law is the truth. Get up out of the dust. Take your rightful place, O man of Israel, O daughter of Zion, and teach and live this word. Do not be one that is rebellious when the Most High hath put forth to you that which is right. Walk that straight and narrow path. That is the Most High's commandments. Once again, thy righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and thy law is the truth. Peace, Israel. Get up out of the dust and stop having conversations and debates with dead people. Peace, Israel, and Yah bless.